So just talk in general about what expansion does to that sense of freedom for yourself and that you have to manage for other people.
Well, this is a good question. Because
the kind I like to ask.
Yeah, I mean, Ariete's at, I'll go through, and I'll try to make it pretty brief because there's a good amount of them. But like Ariete's in a very interesting position now that like that team is so incredibly tight and they've all worked with me for so long. They kind of understand the mission, you know? So I think right now, actually, interestingly, the last like 6 weeks has been the first time actually like just maybe one dish in particular, two maybe, that I didn't have an idea that they presented to me one of their ideas and that it landed on the menu. Usually how that place works is like we'll sit all together, we'll sit for a couple hours, we'll come up with a bunch of ideas, we'll rap on a bunch of things, and then we put a lot of things on paper. I, give them some reference recipes and stuff like that. They start to put things together. We set up a day that we all try at least components, and then we set up another day we start to like test complete dishes together, and then that's when they kind of like end up on a menu. This has like been the first time that someone is just like they're really taken. They understand the restaurant enough that they can start to create on their own.
Yeah.
Well, and that was an interesting experience for me because, like, I know, like, every dish on that menu's got a story and a reason and something that happened to me in my past and something that, like, I remember from when I was a child or, like, whatever. So that one was, like, a very interesting time. But, when you have talent, you have to let them grow to be creative so then they can also grow within themselves, right? Which is also the opportunity that I didn't have coming up under people because they didn't really afford me that opportunity. And I think it stunted my growth to an extent and also made me cagey and want to leave places.
Was there somebody who, would you say that you are giving your people more freedom than you were ever given?
I think the only chef that really gave me tons and tons of freedom was Norman. Norman, and listen, they didn't always land on menus, but like when I left Tuyo, like half that menu were my dishes.
Yeah.
And
so you were being encouraged.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot in that process too, because then the next restaurant I went to, I had no freedom at all whatsoever. And that's okay. I learned a lot in that place. I think that is incredibly valuable now. So, with the bad, there is a lot of good. But
sure.
So then branching out.
And sorry, but the next place that you were at, where you weren't given as much freedom, do you think that there was a good, for what the restaurant was, do you think there was a good reason for that, in that model, in that space, to not give people as much freedom?
No.
Okay. All right.
No, I just think my boss was a putz. Who want to just be very blatant. Not my boss, but just my direct boss was a fucking putz. Okay. So anyways, expansion. I think that the creativity portion of this is like, it's twofold. Right? Like when you build a concept, you're not totally free. And this is why Ariete is such an interesting concept, because there is no like boundary there necessarily. Like you can really fuck with a bunch of different stuff and be pretty outlandish and not feel like you're constrained to like a certain type of cuisine. Like there's certain things that we don't mess with, but we don't really mess with them because they're just not our bag.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of French influence, there's Cuban influence, there's a lot of like Latin American influence, there's European, Italian. There's a lot of influence from all over the place there, because the way I like to put it is that is a chef-driven concept. So menu structure, there's a good amount of like structure there, but like boundaries are kind of limitless. But when you start to build concepts, and I think this is where it gets difficult, but also can be very easy. There's two different types. Like Nave was a little bit of a struggle for me. Not totally like something that I'm super like I understand it, but it wasn't like second nature like a lot of Ariete's food to me. But then when you look at a concept like Chugs was a lot of fun for me and still is a lot of fun for me because it's a diner, right? Like you go to a diner, you can eat a Greek salad. So my thought process was, why can't you go to a diner and eat, Cuban food? And still do like diner classics, egg salad, chicken salad, pancakes, meatloaf, stuff like that. I mean, there's pierogies on that menu.
Yeah.
So it really, and it was all a bunch of food that I really enjoyed to eat too. So I had a lot of fun creating that menu, and still do have a lot of fun messing with that menu, because one, it's a lot of food I like to eat. Two, it's a lot of food I'm super familiar with and comfortable with. And three, it was a style of food that I wanted to get my hands on, because I really wanted to, again, change what people's perception of the food was. So like, we've talked about this a ton of times too, like Cuban food just doesn't have to be like what people think it should be. It could definitely be looked at through a different lens, and that's okay. People get very offended by that statement, but it's totally fine with me. You know, like, I'm okay with doing croquetas out of short rib and croquetas out of black beans, and you know what Gio does with the pastelitos, which is like all these weird, you know, outlandish things, which are all delicious. Yeah. You know, I'm okay with not pressing certain Cuban sandwiches, because I don't think they're better that way, and that's okay. You know, right. Like, why not give it a shot? Well, that's not the way it's supposed to be done. Well, I don't know. I mean, are you the keeper of the sandwich? You know, like, I just don't, I don't know what to tell them.
It's a good shirt.
Yeah. You know, yes. But, and then I would go to like our most current concept, which is, you know, we took over an existing bar restaurant that was in Shenandoah, which is like a little Havana adjacent and Coral Gables adjacent, and actually Coconut Grove adjacent. And that one specifically, I've had a lot of fun with, because at a bar, you know, I opened up a restaurant as the sous chef called the Local Craft Food and Drink. This is a long time ago, and that was a really cool experience, because cool craft beers, cool craft cocktails, and really interesting food. You know, like, obviously there's a burger, there's wings, but it's not like a traditional burger, not a traditional wing, and then a bunch of like cool stuff on the menu that was kind of like curveballs, which was great. You know, we did porchetta, we did a lot of in-house charcuterie, and the thing about that concept, and the reason why I've had such a like enjoyable time creating that menu, one is because the person that leads that kitchen is a very good friend and super talented, which has a lot to do with how creative you as a chef owner can be, because if they can't execute your ideas, then it really doesn't matter. Right. But him being as talented as he is, and you know, hardworking as he is, and also being like very creative like I am, it's very easy to sit down and just like want to change a whole menu, because we have all these great ideas. Obviously we can't do that, but we have all these great ideas and all this cool shit, and it's like people just want to go in there, and they usually just want to have like a burger and a beer, or a burger and a cocktail, or whatever. But if you give them other options, it's cool. So like, that one has, I would say, like, food wise, has zero structure, like none. And that recklessness to me is exciting. Yeah. You know, like, I don't have to be like, well, we're a Cuban restaurant. Right. Yeah. We are an Italian restaurant. We are super fine dining restaurant too. Like that, there's a lot of stress in creativity there, because I would say from the fine dining side, the hardest point is like, you can be creative and it could be beautiful, but is it delicious? Right. Which is, with fine dining food, the most difficult thing. So like, when we do food at Ariete and we do all this stuff and all this menu development and all this creativity, we sit there, we have a dish, and the first thing I always ask everyone at the table is like, do you find this delicious? And it's such a simple, stupid question, but that is the most important thing. Like, you could be as creative as you fucking want. I've eaten at Alinea. I've eaten at places in Spain that shit is like, you know, you eat balloons at Alinea, right? Yeah, yeah. But the balloon at Alinea is delicious. Also very creative, also super weird, right? Yeah. But that's cool, you know? And I think when people go super creative, sometimes it becomes like sterile and not delicious.